With dominoes, it is one of the few games where the player aims to be deboned, and they want to debone themselves. On top of this, each player wants to prevent the other players from doing the same thing. Talk about getting boned in the end if you fail to achieve your goal. Greetings and welcome back to Checkpoint Gaming Dominoes. With this episode, we will be going over the rules for the game. Though there are variants, we'll be using the block version as a base due to its simplicity. With this version of the game, it is played with 2 to 4 players and uses the double 6 set. And if playing with 4 players, it can be played individually or in pairs. If playing in pairs, the partners are to sit across from each other. With this version's objective, it is to be the first player to get rid of all of their tiles that are found in their hand, thus causing them to win the hand. At the same time, each player is trying to block, thus the name of this variant, the other players, from winning the hand. But with that said, it is possible for the game to come to an end if none of the players are able to continue playing due to them not being able to lay down any more tiles. After the tiles have been shuffled, if playing a 2-player game, each player is to draw 7 tiles from the boneyard. But if playing with a 3 to 4-player game, then each player is to draw 5 tiles. A variant to this is to have 2 players draw 8 dominoes each, 3 players draw 6 dominoes each, and 4 players drawing 5 dominoes each. And as the players draw their respective tiles, the tiles are typically placed on their long edge in front of each player so that they can see them, but to disallow anyone else playing from seeing their values. Displaying the tiles in this manner will also allow the opponents to know how many tiles are remaining in the player's hand at all times. Because of that, players are not allowed to hide any of their dominoes. But if a domino becomes accidentally exposed during the drawing process, then all of the dominoes are to be reshuffled and redrawn. After each hand has been created, a domino is considered to be exposed when it is played, and the player removed their hand from said tile. But until then, the tile is able to be placed in any playable area. And if a tile gets accidentally exposed from the player's hand after the drawing process has been completed, then it can be simply picked up with play continuing as normal. An alternative rule sees the exposed tile having to be left face up and can only be played at the opponent's direction. If playing with this rule, it will have to be agreed upon before play begins. In the situation where a player has underdrawn a hand at the start of the round, then they will have to complete their hand by drawing the necessary tiles from the boneyard once they discover the mistake or the situation is brought to their attention. But if an overdraw occurs and is discovered, then the player found to the overdrawer's right is to randomly draw tiles for them without looking at the tiles and return them to the boneyard, followed by it being reshuffled. An alternative to this is to have the overdrawn tiles to be exposed before having them be returned to the boneyard and have it be reshuffled. With determining who will go first, there are a number of ways of doing this. One of these variants is to have the dominoes placed face down, shuffle them, then have each player draw a single tile with the player who draws the highest valued domino go first for that given round. Once that is done, return these tiles back to the boneyard and then engage in a reshuffle. Once this reshuffling is done, the players are to draw their hands with the winner of the draw starting the round. During the shuffling process, the players' hands are not allowed to stay upon the same tiles. An option that is available while shuffling is to have the player who engaged in shuffling be the last to engage in tile drawing during the game. With games that consist of 3 or more players, they have designated positions around the table with each position known as a seat. One way to determine this is with the aforementioned method used to determine first player. For the other players, if playing individually instead of pairs, their seat is determined based upon the tile values they drew, and whenever there is a tie, they'll just redraw in order to break said tie. At the start of each turn, the player in first position is to play one of the tiles from their hand, face up, and only one tile is able to be played at a time. If playing with 3 or more players, then play is to travel in a clockwise direction. With that said, players have the option of playing in a counterclockwise direction if they choose to do so. And if a player possesses a playable tile, they will have to play it when it's their turn to play. This tile is to start the line of play with the following player trying to match one of their dominoes to the end or side of the laid domino. With blanks, they match to other blanks. And if a player plays a wrong tile, then it is known as a misplay. And if it gets discovered before the next player plays a tile, then the player who misplays will have to restore the tile back to their hand and play a proper tile. But if the misplay goes unnoticed, then said tile is considered valid and can't be replaced with a correct tile, and if a player is able to score upon a misplay, then they're allowed to keep it. With the line of play, which is also known as a layout or string, it represents the tile configuration upon the play area, develops lengthwise, and it starts off with the single tile that is played to start off the game, which is then to grow as players add matching tiles to those that have already been played. As the game progresses, if the tiles come dangerously close to the table edge, players will often place a tile in this situation at a right angle when playing it. From there, play is to continue in a linear manner from either end of this turned tile. It is worth noting that with the rules for the line of play, it will vary based upon the variant. In many of the variants, they see doubles serving as spinners, allowing play, and thus the tiles to be played on all 4 of the tile's sides. There are even times when a spinner is required to start the game. Building off of this, some variants require that all 4 sides of any given spinner will have to be occupied before anything else is allowed to be placed elsewhere. But some variants only allow the opening double to be a spinner, and when a double isn't played as a spinner, it can only be played upon 2 sides. With the Domino version, it uses curved tiles during play. Because of this, one or both sides of the line of play can become blocked due to geometrical reasons. Sounds like a version of the game that would be appealing to geometers. And with train game versions of Dominoes, they start off with the spinner that will see various trains branching off of it. Most of these train game variants will have these trains be owned by a single player, with most situations requiring the player to only extend their own given train. When building off of the line of play, players are to alternate its extension by placing a single tile at one of its given endpoints, with each tile being played having to possess the matching number of pips at the open end. And regardless of the pattern that is made, the open end will always be the last domino played remaining the same. When placing the dominoes, it will have to be placed next to that of a matching tile, with singles being placed end to end unless the play area prohibits it, and doubles being placed crossing a single, basically making a T shape along the line of play. The ends are the narrow part of the tile, with the sides being the long part of the tile, and play is able to be made on either end of a single domino and upon both sides of a double domino. Unless playing a version that allows it, players are unable to play a tile upon the end of a double. Most versions of the game will see doubles only be played crosswise, with singles being played lengthwise with the next tile that is played and added after a double. And the double isn't a spinner, it will have to be played lengthwise. But if a player is unable to do so with a valid tile within their hand, said player will have to draw tiles from the boneyard until they're able to. When drawing from the boneyard, some variants allow this to occur, but disallows the player from drawing the last 2 tiles from the boneyard before being forced to pass if said player isn't able to play a tile. But some variants disallow players from drawing from the boneyard if they're unable to play a tile, thus forcing said player to pass. With that said, players are unable to draw from the boneyard if they possess a playable tile within their hand. If this is done accidentally, then the player will have to declare that this is the case. With each turn of the game, the first player position is to rotate amongst the game's participants. In the event that a player engages in a wrong play and it is noticed by the opponent before the succeeding play occurs, then the situation is to be corrected. But in the situation where play has occurred since the wrong play, then the wrong play is to stand as if it was a legal play. If a succeeding player draws a tile from the boneyard before noticing a wrong play, said player is to keep the drawn tile and, if necessary, will continue to draw tiles until they're able to play one. With the end game, once a player has played their final tile of the round, they're to declare domino with scoring then to be done. So with that said, that is what you need to know about the rules. With that taken care of, we can start talking about scoring. If you liked this episode, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode, and happy gaming.